So you've chosen to learn the Gunlance. Allow me to be the first one to welcome you into the Church of Boom. But time is short, and I'm sure this guide's already going to be way longer than I intended it to, because that's just the way my guides usually go. So let's get you out there and blowing up monsters as fast as possible. Before we begin, though, I do have to mention I'm going to be using PlayStation inputs as my default for telling you what I'm doing. So I'm going to be putting an image on screen right now that is going to be telling you what each of the buttons that I'm going to be bringing up corresponds to. If you want to, take a screenshot, put it on your second monitor, type it down on Notepad, something, just so that you understand, when I'm typing triangle, that means Y if you happen to be in a Xbox controller, or left mouse click if you happen to be on PC, okay? Because from now on, I'm just going to be referring to PlayStation controls because that's usually kind of like the standard they'll go by when it comes to Monster Hunter. Anyway, let's get things started. The very first thing that I would like to advise people on is actually go to the options, and under controls on the second page, go to aim, focus mode, controls, and for melee weapons, set that to toggle. Now, I know that this is going to be rough for some people to get used to using it in toggle. I mean, I played through the whole game using activate mode, but there are some definitive advantages to using toggle mode. Allow me to show it. So right now we do not have focus mode, and if you notice, we're going to go from this rock and we're going to do a forward lunge. Didn't quite hit our target, did we? So let's go ahead, swap into focus mode, and let's do that same forward lunge. That looked like it went quite a bit further, right? Yes, there is increased forward momentum whenever you are in focus mode, which is a definite advantage if you need to be closing gaps. So that is one of the reasons why I'd recommend it. The other thing is you can actually dodge sideways much more efficiently without having to input an action. As you can see, we can just kind of like dart around the monster from neutral, which is very useful. You can also do the long hop from neutral, which I'll teach you guys how to do, so don't worry about it. Whereas without that, you're expected to like do an attack before you can actually dodge sideways like this, or do like a shell and then you can dodge sideways. Or even for the long hop, you're expected to like hop twice or perform an attack and then hop. So there's just some definite advantages to being in focus mode when it comes to the Gunlance. So I would most definitely recommend people to kind of just like get used to that, because it's going to be much better for you. Now, let's start things off by talking about your weapon gauge. If you look to the top left-hand side, you'll notice that our weapon gauge has three main indicators. The first one is going to be those orange-looking bullets. Those are your Wyvernfire charges. Yes, in Monster Hunter Wilds, the Gunlance has 2 Wyvernfire charges instead of 1. So if you go ahead and pop off 1 Wyvernfire, which is R2 plus triangle and circle, boom! You'll notice that it expends 1 of those. We get 2. If you fire off 2 Wyvernfires in a row, the second one's going to come off faster than the first one. Also, Wyvernfire no longer just reloads through time. Very much like in previous Monster Hunters, it does reload through time, but it also reloads whenever you hit the monster with any attack. If you pay attention to the gauge, you'll see it rise up, even just with melee strikes, right? If you do actual, like, full burst or something like that, it's going to shoot up even more. And I think that one of the things that charges up the most is the charged shells. Even though charged shells is not particularly efficient when it comes to using normal shelling, if you're just trying to get your Wyvernfire up, charged shells is most definitely the way to go. The second indicator, that little blue thing, that is your Wyrmstake cannon. So if we just spam triangle, we are going to go into the Wyrmstake cannon combo that uses up the Wyrmstake. And as you can see, once the Wyrmstake gets used, you get a different icon there. The Wyrmstake only comes back if you do a long reload. So that is to say, if you do quick reloads, not going to work. You're not going to get your stake back. If you do a long reload, then you get your stake back. Another thing that will let you get your stake back is using your focus strike, which basically consists of pressing down on R1 or the right bumper whenever you are in focus mode. That reloads your stake. I'll also use it if you use it on a wound, but now that we don't have any wound, we can do that, and that will reload your stake as well. So keep that in mind. You can reload your stake either with a full reload or by pressing your focus strike that will reload your stake automatically. So keep these things in mind, because sometimes you might want to reload your stake quickly, but you have an open wound, so you can just unleash a stake attack, which is very, very useful. Now, the other thing that you have on your gauge, those little 6 yellow bullets, those are your shells. That is the number of shots that you get to do with your Gunlance. Right now we're using a normal shelling Gunlance, so it has 6 shots by default. If you get level 2 load shells, which does exist in this game, you can have 7 shells in normal, you can have 3 shells in wide, and 4 shells in long. But by default, you cut 1 shell from all of those. So that's 6 shells in normal, 3 shells in long, and 2 shells in wide, which should be fairly familiar for everybody that has ever played Gunlance. But for newcomers, that's just the way that it goes. Different shelling styles are going to be used in different play styles, even if in this game that's really not the case, but I will talk to you guys about the different shelling styles a little bit further ahead in the video. But now, you guys know about the weapon gauge, you guys know about, focus mode and all of that stuff. We have to start by talking about movement, because positioning is one of the most important things when it comes to Monster Hunter, and moving around with the Gunlance, as you can see, is quite slow. It's a big lugging weapon, so that's going to be something that you're going to have to learn how to deal with. So one of the most important things for you to get used to is dodging. So the Gunlance allows you to perform 2 dodges in quick succession, and then there's going to be a little bit of a period where you can't dodge. It's very short, but if you guys notice, we can do dodge, dodge, then we wait, dodge, dodge. It almost seems like you're not even waiting, but there is a bit of a wait after that second dodge. But yeah, these are the ways in which you're going to be moving throughout the field. You can choose which direction you are dodging in. You can dodge forwards, you can dodge backwards. Dodging forwards doesn't give you a whole lot of momentum, but yeah, you're going to be doing directional dodging. Now, if you happen to want to play with activated focus mode, which means whenever you actually move around, your character does this, you should keep in mind that in order to do proper directional dodging, you're going to be expected to do an attack. Otherwise, your character dodges a little bit weirdly. If you're trying to do backwards dodging, you can just press the dodge button, or if you go forward, you can also just do that. So dodging works like that. Get used to it. It's just any direction plus the cross button, right? Now, the thing about dodging with the Gunlance is that there is one very special dodge that you can do, which is the long back hop. I've heard Hunter refer to this as the Korean back hop. I'm not sure if other people refer to it like that, but it's basically a longer hop. This also works for Lance. So if you notice, if we do this, this is our standard dodge, right? If we do this and then we press back and dodge afterwards, you'll notice that the second one's going to be a little bit longer. See, that is the long hop. You can also do it after an attack. So let's say you do an attack, and then you press back and cross, it's going to do the long hop. You do a shell, back and cross, long hop. And what a lot of players end up doing sometimes is to close up on the monster faster. They will actively turn around and then back hop and long back hop. And you can close a lot of distance this way. You can do this in almost any direction with a little bit of practice, so do practice around with long hopping, because that is a very, very good skill to have. Even though, like I said, if you're playing with focus mode, you're likely going to just be doing this rather than long hopping towards the monster, but we have other ways of closing the gap. Now, another very important thing when it comes to dodging with the Gunlance is that you should use it to cancel out animation. So for instance, one of the animations that a lot of us with the Gunlance like to do is the slam. Notice that recovery timing on the slam, right? I'm going to do a slam, and immediately afterwards I'm going to press backwards to move, and you guys are going to be able to see how long it takes before I actually start moving. Okay, I'm pressing back, and now I'm moving. You see how long that takes? That's insane. So imagine that instead of that, you do your slam and then you dodge. Way faster. This works for literally everything when it comes to the Gunlance, right? So if you do a thrust like this, I'm pressing left, right actually, and notice how long it takes me before I move, right? If instead you do this and then you dodge, you're moving again. So dodge canceling, very, very important when it comes to Gunlance. The only thing that it doesn't work for is Wyvernfire. Wyvernfire just has a lengthy recovery, but pretty much I think almost every other move of the Gunlance you can kind of dodge away from. So you can get away from being stuck in the animation for long. So dodge often, dodge after attacks, dodge a bunch, and just try to get the feel for it. Now, the other thing with the Gunlance is, obviously, you don't move a whole lot. So even with your dodges and all that stuff, it's going to take you a while to get to places. The other option that you have is obviously you have a big honking shield. So just go ahead and press the right trigger. Boom. You're blocking. Now, this time around, there is perfect blocking, which I'll talk about a little bit later. If you notice, whenever you hit the block button, there's like a little circle that the character does with the shield. During that is the period for your perfect block. But not only that, there are other things that cause you to block. This time around, whenever we reload, we're blocking, and the shield's going to glow white. So, like, look at that. Whenever I do this, that's a block. Okay? Counts as a block. And if you do a quick reload, also counts as a block. So whenever the shield's in front of you, counts as a block. There is also our best combo right now, which is the multi-stake, I still can't say, Wyrmstake full blast and multi-Wyrmstake full blast. It's got guard points. So basically, whenever you see the shield glow white, that means that that is a guard point in the middle of that combo. So you can try to time your attacks with that in order to take advantage of those guard points. So that's just something to keep in mind. Blocking is going to be something that you're going to be expected to do quite often as Gunlance, and also perfect blocking, which you should be practicing and stuff, but we'll get to that. Now, another one of the new things that we got as a Gunlance is Shell Step, which is really, really cool. Basically, if you shell and input a direction when you shell, your character's going to do this. So it allows you to move around the monster while still pelting him with shells. So if you're studying a monster, this is actually quite cool. You can kind of like go around, pelt at him a little bit with your shells. Even though if that's not really the way that most of us are going to end up using this, it's just a cool little thing. You can go in any direction that you want. You can also go backwards. You can do it any way that you want. So shell stepping, pretty friggin' cool if you ask me. Now, let's go ahead and talk about old school Gunlancing, which is the full burst. So the way that you get the full burst is you need to get to slam. And slam involves either first you do your lunging thrust, which is just forward and triangle, the first attack. The follow-up to lunging thrust is actually going to be pokes. So it has to be only on the very first attack. So you have lunging thrust, and then if after you do lunging up thrust, you press triangle and circle, you're going to go into a slam. Another way of going into a slam is just pressing triangle and circle to do the rising slash, and then pressing triangle again, and you do the overhead smash. So these are the two ways of getting to slam. There's also ways of getting to slam from aerial, but we'll talk about those. But basically, whenever you have a slam, you can press circle in order to do a full burst. So you can go like this, triangle, circle, and then circle, boom. They call it burst fire here. Okay, and then the follow-up to burst fire in old school Gunlancing would be triangle to go into a wide sweep. So like this, triangle, circle, circle, triangle, wide sweep, and then you do a reload, which is right trigger and circle. This sounds way more complicated than it actually is. Once you get a little bit of practice, this is one of the easiest combos you'll ever do. But yeah, you guys can see the buttons on screen. Boom, wide sweep, then reload, and then you can press triangle, circle again for an overhead smash. See, whenever you do a quick reload, that allows you to basically go into slam as well by pressing triangle and circle, which by turn allows you to do burst fire. So burst fire is not going to be as used this time around unless you are short on time. The ideal situation for burst fire is I don't have enough time to do a full Wyrmstake blast, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do a burst fire instead because the monster is going to get away from me. That's usually the situation where you're going to be using burst fire, because the new combo that you actually want to go for involves getting to the wide sweep. So before we get to that, let's actually get to a wide sweep. See, following a slam this time around, if we press triangle, we're going to be going into the wide sweep. So let's go into a slam, triangle, circle, triangle, triangle again. That's a sweep. Another way of getting to a sweep is actually just spamming triangle. You're going to do 2 pokes into a sweep. Or if you are moving forward, you're going to do the lunge into 2 pokes into a sweep. Now, this situation with the 2 pokes, usually I only ever use the double poke if I'm too far from the monster. So let's say I do my lunging up thrust. I'm still a little bit far, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to close the gap a little bit, and I just want to keep the combo going. I'll do the 2 thrusts, and then eventually I will get to the wide sweep. So yeah, you have your up thrusts, you have all of the ways in which you get into a slam, you can then follow and get into a sweep, or there is yet another way of getting to a sweep, which is shell step into a triangle, and that will give you the sweep. So let's say you shell step forward, and then you press triangle, boom, sweep. Okay? You guys are like, okay, Rurikhan, that's all real cool. You're teaching us all about this sweep, but what the hell's the point of the sweep? I know how to get the sweep. You taught me like 3 to 4 different ways of getting the sweep. I'm tired of this sweep business. When do we get to boom? And it's immediately after the sweep. See, after you do the sweep, you're going to press triangle circle. So let's say that we're going to do the shell step one, which is the fastest one. So that would be circle into triangle, and then triangle circle, Wyrmstake full blast. That's pretty cool, huh? You get some booms off of there. But Wyrmstake full blast goes into multi-Wyrmstake full blast if you then input triangle or circle again. So again, let's go. You do shell, forward circle, and then forward triangle, and then triangle circle, and then triangle again. Okay, so forward circle, forward triangle, triangle circle, and then spam triangle. Pretty cool, huh? And that goes off of any type of sweep that you can do. So you can also do upswing into slam, into sweep, and then triangle circle. And triangle circle again. Not triangle circle, but just like triangle, whatever. You guys get the idea. And then the other one would be you can also go triangle, triangle, sweep, triangle, circle. This is like the most desirable combo for the Gunlance, which is why it's important for you guys to understand all the ways in which you can get into it. You can also come in from a aerial attack, which if you press triangle while you are with your weapon sheathed from a cliff, you're going to do this. Slam. Then you can go into sweep, and guess what? Anytime that you see a sweep, you can go into this combo. So it's just a matter of getting different ways of getting you into that sweep. Okay? But now, like I said, the fastest one, the one that most people are going to be using, is going to be the shell step into sweep. So you press forward and circle, then forward and triangle, and then triangle circle to get your combo started. Okay? But yeah, this is going to be one of your most, if not the most important combo. But you can follow it up even more, because now they've given us something truly special. And that is, every time you perform a Wyrmstake attack, which is the thing that just stays there, like this little repeating hit that you hear, like this thing, every time you do one of those, it cuts down on your Wyvernfire casting time. So if you guys notice, I'm going to do Wyvernfire, and look at how long this takes. Wyvernfire, by the way, being your block plus triangle and circle, so right trigger, triangle, and circle, right? You saw how long that took, right? That was pretty massive. Now, let's go ahead and do a stake real quick, which if you just want to get a quick stake off, you can also just go from shell into sweep into a stake if you just mash triangle. So like this. And now let's do another Wyvernfire. That one came off a little bit faster. So every time you do a Wyrmstake, if you do Wyvernfire shortly after, it's going to be a faster charged Wyvernfire. So that's kind of like the type of gameplay that they're trying to reward. Now we're going to go ahead and charge our Wyvernfires real quick and show you another thing that I told you about the Wyvernfire earlier that you most likely forgot. And what you have forgotten is the fact that the second Wyvernfire is going to come off even faster than the first one. So let's take it from the top, shall we? I told you guys about the combo that will get us into the full Wyvernstake blast the fastest, which is forward circle into forward triangle into triangle circle, right? And then if you noticed, that particular combo ends with a Wyrmstake. So that means that we can follow up that Wyrmstake with a faster Wyvernfire. And here's how that looks. And then the second Wyvernfire comes off faster than the first one, so you can do another one. Another thing that you'll notice is that Wyvernfires have increased range when compared to Wyvernfire from previous Monster Hunters. I mean, just look at how far away we are from the target. If we were to fire a Wyvernfire from here, it would still hit, which is pretty friggin' good if you ask me. I like me some beautiful Wyvernfires. So just keep in mind, whenever you do an attack that involves a stake, that is also going to allow you to do a quick Wyvernfire. So let's go ahead and reload our Wyvernfires again. Okay, so for the next thing that we need to talk about, we're going to be talking about the Gunlance's Focus Strike, which is Drake Auger. Now, Drake Auger is extremely powerful. The reasoning is, I think all Focus Strikes are going to be extremely powerful, but basically the way that you do Drake Auger is you have to be in focus mode, and then you just press down on R1. So if you have focus mode set to toggle, you just have to press down on R1, which is the same button that you use for running. So this goes for all platforms. Whatever button you use for running, that's the one that is used for your attack. Now, there are two ways of doing Drake Auger. If you don't give it any directional input, your character will do it in place. If you give it a directional input, your character will go in that general direction and will try to hit the monster. It's important for you to try and aim this. It's a little bit tricky to land this one. I've noticed that it is a lot easier with other weapons to land their focus strike, but that's not a big deal because you're wielding a Gunlance. It doesn't matter that it's a little bit more challenging. It's expected of Gunlance mains to play the game in a harder difficulty. So landing your focus attacks is going to be a little bit more challenging, okay? But I'm sure you'll be fine. So let me show you guys what this focus attack looks like when it actually hits a monster. We're going to see if we can generate a wound here real quick. There it is. So we have a wound. We're going to move forward, press R1. And now you're going to keep capitalizing. And then by the time you get to the end, you get a stake. It explodes, deals a ton of damage. Feels really good, but most importantly, this is going to control the monster. Whenever you hit a monster with this attack, unless there's like a bit of an animation hiccup or something, which rarely ever happens, but if you hit a monster with this attack, the monster is going to stay in place while you are punishing it with your focus strike. So this is very important. But another important thing that you will have noticed is like, Rurikhan, doesn't that attack count as a stake attack? Yes. Yes, it does. Does that mean that I can do a fast Wyvernfire after Drake Auger? Why, yes, astute viewer, yes it does! So you can follow it up with a Wyvernfire, and it feels pretty friggin' good, if you ask me. And you can follow that one with yet another Wyvernfire after doing the first one, which is pretty friggin' good. Now, another very important thing that we need to master when it comes to the Gunlance is going to be blocking. Now, I told you guys you can block, and there's perfect blocks and all of that, and you guys should test that. You can come to the training area, you can try it out to figure out what the parry timing is. You just go over here and go select mode, smash mode, and basically this is going to cause the little training dummy to start doing this. And this allows you to practice your perfect guards. As you can see, we got one right there. All you have to do is wait until it's about to hit, and then you press the block button. It's going to take a little bit getting used to, particularly because every monster is going to have its own moveset, but this is something that you need to practice because you want to be landing perfect guards. Now, a really cool trick that I've found for this is if you actually hold your block and then you just reload when the thing is coming, you're going to be able to do a perfect guard while having block up the whole time, and if you mess up the perfect guard, you're not going to get as punished. So just keep guard up, and then go for reload by pressing circle, and you will land the perfect guard whilst guarding the whole time. It's almost like a perfect guard cheat for the Gunlances, which feels really, really good, if I'm to be completely honest. Now, you didn't think that perfect guard, that's it, we don't get to do anything else. Oh no, you can follow up perfect guard with a slam by pressing down on triangle. I kind of whiffed that one, my bad. So we're going to go ahead, perfect guard, boom, you go into slam. What does slam allow you to do, if you guys remember? It allows you to do a burst fire. So whenever you do a perfect guard, you can punish the monster with a burst fire. Or, if you have enough time, you do the perfect guard, and then you're going to, oops, whiff that one. you do your perfect guard, and then you're going to slam into wide sweep into your full burst. Just keep in mind, like I said, if you have enough time. Now there we also blocked it because we have the guard points of the, like I told you guys, the full Wyrmstake blast as guard points is pretty good. Another cool thing that you can do from the perfect guard is you get faster Wyvernfire as well. So you go perfect guard, faster Wyvernfire, boom, Bob's your uncle. Feels good. Like I said, do practice this tech of like just having your shield up, and when the thing is coming down, reload, and you get the perfect guard. It feels great. I heavily recommend it. Pretty good. You can also shell from your perfect guard, but I haven't noticed too much advantages to shelling from it. It's just like, it's just a regular shell. It's not really that big of a deal. So you can also do charge shells from the perfect guard, but they don't really charge any faster. So usually if you're doing a perfect guard, you're either slamming or, you know, capitalizing with a Wyvernfire. That's usually the way that things go. So now let's talk a little bit about aerial gunlance. Let me turn off the smash thing because we don't need it anymore. Select mode, standby. So with aerial gunlance, you can do two things. Let's say you jump off of this little ledge. That gives you the aerial's options, right? So you're just going to go off, press triangle, boom. This is going to give you the aerial poke. You can also jump off by dodging forwards from the cliff, press triangle, going to give you the aerial poke. The other option that you have is you can hop forward and then you press the block button, right trigger, and that will give you the slam. If you lunge from a cliff, so you do this attack, but from a cliff to the point where you're going to jump off, that is going to give you the slam. And if you time it correctly, you can even do two attacks like you saw there. But yeah, this gives you the slam. What do slams allow you to do? If you guys remember, I told you, you can go from slam into burst fire, into wide sweep, and you guys know the drill. You can also, instead of going into burst fire, you can go from slam into sweep, into full Wyrmstake, full blast, and Bob's your uncle. So usually when you are in the air, the thing that I would recommend the most is going for the slam. By default, I think slam is one of your best options. However, if you're trying to get mount on the monster, if you're trying to score a mount, strangely enough, and this is something that I caught on a Cowslayer video, shout out to Cowslayer, strangely enough, when it comes to mounting, the poke attack has more mounting modifier. So you will mount faster by spamming pokes than you will by doing slams, which is something that I thought slams would do more since slams deal more damage, but I was incorrect. So if you want to mount, poke is actually the best way to go. Another thing that you can do from aerial is you can hop off the ledge and press circle, or your shelling button. And you're going to do the shell slap. Just pretty friggin' cool, for sure. But yeah, these are kind of like your aerial options. So the idea here is you want to slam for damage. You want the aerial full burst for style, because the reality is hitting this attack is a pain in the ass, but it is stylish as hell, you do have to admit. Or you want the poke if you want to get a mount. Those are like your kind of like three options for aerial, okay? Now that we've covered aerial, I also want to teach you guys a little bit about gap closing. Now, as I told you, focus mode allows you to gives you a little bit more forward momentum. But let's say the monster is really far away. There is a little bit of tech that, once again, comes from our good friend Cowslayer, one of the best Gunlance players in the game when it comes to teaching people how to play the weapon. And one of the things that you can do is you can forward lunge, and then you can press circle midway through the forward lunge, and then you can press triangle, and it's going to look a little bit like this. And as you can see, we can cover quite a bit of distance, but not only that, did you see the move that we finished on? Oh, Rurikhan, was that the sweep that allows us to go into multi-stake Wyvern full blast? Yes! Yes, it is! Look at that! Oh, that is so good! So good! Hells yeah. Feels good, doesn't it? So now, let's talk a little bit about the different shelling styles. So far, I've been showing you guys what normal shelling style plays like. Normal shelling is usually going to be the best for full burst playstyle. So that is, if you're trying to do the full burst, which is whenever you do upswing and then you press triangle to do a slam. It's going to do a full burst. Whenever you're trying to do that, this is one of the better ones. It's also going to be very good for Wyrmstake Full Blast, but strangely enough, in the current version of the game, this actually doesn't deal the most damage with normal, which is weird, because this would be the ideal scenario for normal shelling. From the testing that me and Fight and Cowboy have done, it seems that wide shelling has the best damage when it comes to full blast, which is strange. Shouldn't be the case, and likely won't be the case. I would expect them to kind of like balance this out, because usually wide shelling is for a different playstyle than this. Now, do keep in mind, this might not be the case in the beginning of the game, but we're talking about once you get load shells and once you get artillery so that you have maximum damage of the Gunlance, wide shelling is going to end up coming out on top, which both me and Cowboy were very impressed by. We were not expecting that to be the case. But anyways, when it comes to normal, this is definitely one of the best ways to do Wyrmstake Full Blast. Now, as a bit of a special little combo that I wasn't aware of in the beginning, another way to get into the sweep is actually doing 2 guarded pokes, which I didn't know. So if you do 2 guarded pokes, which you can do pokes in 3, so 1, 2, 3, and then there's going to be a break, right? If you do 2 pokes and then stop blocking and press triangle, you're going to get a wide sweep, which also allows you to get into Wyrmstake Full Blast from a defensive position. So it's like, if you're in a situation where the monster's constantly pelting at you and you're just like poking away, trying to find like a little opening, poking away at him while still guarding, when you get 2 of those, you can go into a wide one. If you get an opening, then you can capitalize with Wyrmstake Full Blast. But let me show you guys another thing. So what do some of these other Gunlances excel at? Let's start things off by showing you long. Okay, so long shelling, as you can see, is going to have less shells than normal. In my opinion, long shelling is kind of like a halfway between normal and wide. Now, the thing about long shelling is that its shells are going to have a little bit more reach than normal shells. So normal shells, usually you have to be very close to the monster. Long shells, you can be a little bit further away, so they're a little bit more forgiving. So if you're someone that is not particularly good at positioning yourself, and you're still, and which there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. If you're still not there learning and all of that, long is going to be a little bit more forgiving as to whether or not you're going to land your shells in case the monster moves away. So that is one of the advantages of long. Another advantage of long is that its Wyrmstake cannon attacks are going to deal more damage. So when it comes to Drake Auger, long is going to deal more damage out of all of the other shelling styles. So if you like to do a whole lot of Drake Auger, this is the one for you. But it's no slouch either. It does comparable damage to normal shelling. I think that currently, in the current version of the game, wide shelling does the most damage when it comes to the Wyrmstake Full Blast. Normal is second, and long is probably lagging behind. But it's still a very good combo to do. The thing is, like I said, it's more forgiving. You're going to land your shells more often. And at the end of the day, your stakes deal more damage, which means that your focus strike deals more damage than with the other Gunlances. But that's long in a nutshell. I actually used long throughout most of the game simply because I love doing Drake Auger. It's one of my favorite attacks. So I used one of the Gunlances that is long shelling. It also had blast on it. I'm not going to tell you which one it is, but it was a ton of fun using that Gunlance, and I slapped quite a few monsters very, very fast. So long shelling also has the ability of doing charged shells in a viable way. I kind of feel like doing charge shells and normal shelling takes too long, but charge shells and long, I can kind of see it working. Not to mention they have a little bit more reach, so it feels good, but it's still not the best. When it comes to the best for charge shells, you're going to be looking at the wide shelling Gunlance. So when it comes to wide shelling, this is the Gunlance that deals the most damage with Wyvernfire. So this is going to be your highest Wyvernfire damage. So if you like doing Wyvernfires, this is the Gunlance that you want. Not only it deals the most damage with Wyvernfire, it is also the one that you can charge your Wyvernfire faster. If you do 3 sessions of charged shells, you're going to have your Wyvernfire thing back. So as you can see, we did 1. Now we're going to do another one. And now we're going to do another one. And boom. 3 charge shells, and you are back in business. Now, do keep in mind that charge shelling this time around, you're not just charging one shell. You're charging all the shells in the chamber, so you have to wait until the charge shelling goes like 1, 2, boom. Right? And once you get load shells, you go 1, 2, 3, and then you let go. It will fire off automatically if you just keep it pressed, but you can let go immediately after the second charge, because that's going to be as much damage as you're going to be dealing with charged shells. So I think that overall, once you actually get load shells and artillery, again, in the current version of the game, which things can change, balance patches happen all the time, but in the current version of the game, I think that overall, wide is the strongest Gunlance. Again, from testing, and this is preliminary testing, things might change along the way, but that's the vibe that I'm getting. And why is that? Because it is the best one for doing charge shells. It is the best one for doing Wyvernfire. And at the same time, it currently, with some of the best Gunlances in the game and artillery as well as load shells, it boasts the highest damage in the full Wyrmstake combo, which, by the way, this is where this shelling style is supposed to be the weakest, and it's still the strongest. So that might be something that ends up getting nerfed. As for the old playstyles of poke shell poke, you can still do that if you want to. I don't think it's super effective personally. I kind of prefer going at it either charge shells, full stake, worm blast, all of that good stuff. But it is doable, and it will probably be very good if you happen to be doing elemental damage, because usually pokes are excellent for elemental damage. I haven't gotten to test that because it would require like way too much investment in the end game, and I want to do my own save on stream, so it's going to take me a while to do that. But by now, you should have a pretty good idea of how to play with the Gunlance. So, before we end this off, let me show you some pretty useless things that you can also do. You will very rarely use these mechanics, but who knows? Maybe it will be fun for you. Whenever you are on Seikret, you can press triangle and circle to exit with an aerial shell. I've already told you guys, doing this is more so for style than anything else, because aiming this thing is an absolute nightmare. So you're going to be missing this a lot, but tell you what, you're going to be looking damn good doing it, right? Am I right? Now, the other thing that you can do is you can just press triangle, and that will give you the, actually, you have to jump off first. So you're going to press cross to jump off, and then you can press triangle. That will give you the aerial poke, which, like I told you, if you want to get mounts, that's what you want to do. And then what is likely going to happen on most situations, you're going to be jumping off, pressing block to do your slam. That is usually what you're going to be doing in most situations, so remember that. You jump off, press block, boom, slam. Now, something that is actually completely useless, but still very, very fun. When you're on your Seikret, you can hold triangle and charge at the monster. It deals a ton of damage, but obviously this is very awkward to aim, okay? But it deals a ton of damage, and it's a ton of fun to do this. You can just charge at the monster, and you're like the cavalry coming in. I can almost hear the trumpet sounds going like... And then at the end, he also does a slam. Now, another thing that you can also do, while your lance is out, you can press circle, and your character will shell. I don't think you can reload. Yeah, you can't reload, unfortunately. So you only get to do that once, then you have to hop off, reload, and then hop back on, and then you can go back to shelling. Bang! Bang! But it's fun. Oh yeah, another thing I forgot to tell you guys, whenever you do a slam, it reloads, which is something that was present in World, but was not present in Rise and Sunbreak. But, yeah, that's kind of like the Gunlance guide. When it comes to recommended skills, I don't want to spoil too many things for you, so the 2 skills that I would most definitely recommend are going to be artillery and load shells. Because artillery is going to reduce the time it takes you to fire off at Wyvernfire. It's going to increase all of your shelling damage, and load shells is going to give you an extra shell and increases your reload speed as well. So it's just two of the best skills for Gunlance. They've always been, always will be, so I would highly recommend those. Although I would also say that they're not necessarily mandatory, because Gunlance does scale off of attack now. So your raw damage is going to influence your shells. Having attack up will influence your shells as well. So there's a lot more choices for stuff that you can put. And naturally, the other thing is going to be evade extender, because by default, things are much better now, but I would still get at least 1 or 2 points of evade extender, because it just makes the weapon much, much easier to use and just feels way more comfy if you have a couple of points of evade extender. Those are my recommendations when it comes to the Gunlance. I'm not going to be stretching this out. It's already like way too long. Hopefully this helped you out with any Gunlance questions that you might have. If you have any further questions, do let me know in the comment section down below. But for now, that is going to be the Gunlance guide. And I'll see you guys out there in the wilds. Stay strong, stay safe. Peace out.